Welcome to the Connecticut State Department of Education's webinar presented by the Talent Office in partnership with Tepper and Flynn. I am Dr. Shawana Tucker, Chief Talent Officer, and I am joined by Christopher Todd, Bureau Chief, and education consultants Sharon Fuller and Kimberly Audette of the Talent Office. On August 11th, the Commissioner of Education, Dr. Miguel Cardona, pursuant to Executive Order 7C, issued one-time flexibilities with the Guidelines for Educator Evaluation 2017 and Connecticut General Statutes Section 10-151B. This webinar provides an overview of the resources that Tepper and Flynn have developed for the Connecticut State Department of Education Talent Office to support districts with the implementation of the flexibilities that reflect the critical importance of the social and emotional learning and well-being of students and educators during the 2020-2021 academic year. While 2020 and the ongoing pandemic has brought changes for all, it remains our goal in the Talent Office to provide you with resources to adapt to varied teaching and learning models while adhering to health requirements. Thanks for your continued commitment to Connecticut students and the work you are doing in Connecticut schools. Sharon Fuller and Kimberly Audette will now provide an overview of two resources to support educator and leader performance and practice.
Thank you, Dr. Tucker. This is Kimberly Audette, and this webinar is designed to introduce parts 1 and 2 of the 3 documents to support the implementation of the flexibilities for the 2020-21 academic year. Parts 1 and 2, as covered in this webinar, include strategies for using the Connecticut rubrics for effective teaching and effective service delivery, the Connecticut Leader Evaluation and Support rubric, strategies for observing performance and practice of educators and leaders in varied teaching and learning models, as well as other resources and professional learning related to performance and practice. The resources for implementing the flexibilities apply to in-person, hybrid, and remote blended teaching and learning models, and include strategies and tools that align to support provided in previously released guidance from the Connecticut State Department of Education, which includes the Plan for Reimagining Connecticut Classrooms for Continuous Learning's Framework for Teaching and Learning in On-Site, Remote, and Blended Environments. Addendum 12 outlines guidance for planning instructional time for learning experiences, and the Learning Hub, which includes curated tools and resources to accelerate learning and advance equity in Connecticut classrooms.
Thank you, Kimberly. This is Sharon Fuller. The 3 guidance documents that support the implementation of the flexibilities can be found on the Connecticut State Department of Education website. In addition to these 3 documents, there are aligned resources not only from the Connecticut State Department of Education, but from national organizations and other state departments of education. Many of these resources appear in the 3 documents as well. This webinar, along with a second one that focuses on the development of student learning goals, can also be found on the Connecticut State Department of Education Talent Office webpage. Patrick Flynn and Amy Tepper have worked with the Connecticut State Department of Education in providing training for evaluators in the observation of educator practice and performance and in providing quality feedback. They have worked with multiple school districts in Connecticut and are familiar with the Connecticut Guidelines for Educator Evaluation, as well as the rubrics used in Connecticut to observe educator practice and performance. At this time, I'm glad to introduce you to Amy Tepper and Patrick Flynn.
Well, thank you. And thanks again to the CSD Talent Office, Shawana, Chris, Sharon, and Kim for involving us in this process. As was suggested, been involved here in Connecticut supporting educator evaluation since we restructured performance management in 2010, and have been honored to have had the opportunity to employ those strategies with educators from around the country, and having the opportunity to have a team of coaches applying the strategies from our books in Australia. But in all of that work, we are especially grateful and excited when we have the opportunity to support Connecticut schools and Connecticut districts. You're going to find a consistent message across the guidelines and the guidance resources that you're going to receive. And the consistent message is really in support of teachers, service providers, leaders, and learners. This year has been a challenging 8 months, and we need to ensure that all educators and leaders feel supported in this year's evaluation process. No steps or actions that we take should increase stress or add to the already existing overwhelm that people are feeling. The consistent message that you'll see in the documents to help address that is that we need to build on what's already in place. We need to build from what we already know and the skills and the practice that remain important and effective regardless of the teaching and learning model. We then need to clarify what needs to be adapted so that we can focus on equity, accessibility, well-being, and social emotional learning for all. In each part of the document or the guidance documents, you'll see sections that help you identify what can be maintained and then what can be adapted, and how you can then utilize that to make connections for your staff. We encourage you to reinforce those principles with your teachers and service providers to help them identify how effectively teaching crosses over regardless of model, how some practices have risen to the top as even more essential, and how some practices must be adapted, and how we need to adopt new practices to ensure success inside remote learning environments. This is an example of a strategy from our 4-part series that we created last spring. In each of the guidance documents, you'll find a section dedicated to resources that will support your work in various ways, and also suggested professional learning. Here you see some snapshots from part 1, observation of educator performance and practice.
In the first part of each of the documents, you will see sections broken down into purpose, expectation, and evidence collection or process. So we've broken this webinar down into those very same sections. So when we engage in a review of performance and practice, like everything we do, it should always focus on the learning, our learners. Our driving purpose is always our commitment to ensure we're advancing equity. And with this purpose in mind, effective supervisors of educators engage in strategies and practices that align with and directly lead to those anticipated outcomes. And so the learner framework described in the CSDE's Plan for Continuous Learning, and this is found on page 6, supports Connecticut schools as they reimagine the teaching and learning process in on-site, remote, and hybrid models to accelerate that learning and advance equity. The Plan for Reimagining Connecticut Classrooms for Continuous Learning provides a framework for teaching and learning in on-site and remote environments that prioritizes specific practices, especially this year. So it's important for evaluators to recognize and observe and provide feedback to support practice and performance in these areas. To start with, that our families are our partners in learning. That we should always align to quality standard-based curriculum and resources, that we should focus on mastery-based learning, that our attention must be on equity, and that there must be consistency, especially in our communication to our families. So when we talk about our purpose and what we're doing here in support of our teachers, the first picture represents the idea that we must be lifelines and life support for our staff and our families. The second picture represents the idea that we must support levels of efficacy. So many feel like they are first-year teachers in engaging in this process. And the third picture represents the idea that this is about growth, growth for all learners, adults, and students. And it's critical to recognize the power of feedback. We know that our students are thriving with feedback in these varied environments, and so too will our teachers and our staff and service providers. But we have to identify the type of feedback that will support them, and that's feedback that feeds forward, or that's feedback that ensures an analysis of effectiveness versus a summary of the teaching. It helps teachers see how they're impacting family and student engagement and learning. It can help leaders see how they're impacting family, student, and staff engagement and learning. And finally, feedback that feeds forward promotes growth and reflection.
In both part 1 and part 2 in the guidance documents, we outline the expectations that remain and how these align with the flexibilities. There are multiple tools available that outline expectations for teaching and learning and for leading and the environments that help foster that learning. Each district has the Connecticut Core Standards and an instructional framework defining the expectations for teaching, learning, and leading, whether it's the CCT for effective teaching or service delivery, or the Connecticut Leader Evaluation and Support rubric. These documents remain the focus of performance and practice review and allow an evaluator to collect evidence of an educator's teaching or service delivery to support educator self-reflection, provide feedback and support, and identify goals for continuous improvement in responsive professional learning. While the expectations outlined in the frameworks or your district aligned framework remain the focus of performance review and support for Connecticut educators or for Connecticut leaders, it's essential that this tool be carefully considered within the context of varied models of teaching and learning and the current realities of our instructional service delivery and leadership practice. The documents we provide here, part 1 and part 2 especially, they guide you in supporting and understanding what those adaptations may be. When we utilize those expectations and leverage the instructional framework for growth, feedback can achieve critical understandings and allow educators to answer 3 questions. Based on Hattie and Timperley's research, we support the idea that feedback can lead to any educator and leader being able to answer, where am I going? How am I going? And what is next? The idea here is we're creating reflective practice through the expectations of performance and practice that we're seeking. As we consider the flexibilities, there's increased need for attention to social emotional learning in both student and adult wellness and student and family engagement. Our support and feedback can also drive these very ideas, taking the step towards both fearless and transformational social emotional learning in our schools and districts, and building models that create environments for support and wellness throughout. The CCT for effective teaching and service delivery rubrics contain very explicit connections in language, especially inside the footnotes related to social emotional learning. And if you consider additional attributes like 3B, including purposeful discourse and how we're building capacity of students to engage in effective discourse, or 3C, including peer feedback and using criteria to self-assess, you can see the inherent SEL foundations and connections that can be made through this type of instruction and pedagogy inside the classroom. Feedback that evaluators provide in support of performance and practice can help and should be focused on supporting and making those connections for teachers. In both part one and part two, we included some potential look-fors aligned to the indicators and priorities that are applicable in varied models. Creating charts like this one that you see on the screen with your teams is a valuable practice to ensuring that first, educators are able to make connections between the expected teaching and learning, service delivery, or leadership practice, and the development of a common or shared understanding of expected practice and what this might look like and sound like in your model of teaching and learning. Now, this is an example from part one that is aligned to the stages we developed that we will discuss further in just a minute or two. In part two, supporting leaders, we've also completed examples in alignment to leadership performance and practice and those attributes inherent in there. This really leads to evidence collection and understanding, how to collect evidence associated with that practice, right? Evidence collection for these expected practices is really at the heart of the support that you're going to provide, and the depth of evidence about teaching and learning or leadership impacts the depth of the feedback and reflection that will result. While the guidelines that we've developed focus on observation as a core modality for evidence collection, we really want to emphasize it's not the only method. We've always promoted 3 core methods for evidence collection, and each can provide a depth of information about performance and practice. Observation and practice, however, it's the one that's the most adapted, especially in remote or hybrid or simultaneous models. So we concentrated the bulk of our time in providing support to districts on how to approach observation practice inside the system.
We recognized back in March that a shift to distance, remote, or hybrid learning was going to happen in stages. And we identified 4 different stages, beginning with just meeting basic needs to include core communication with students and families, basic tech needs beyond just addressing trauma and basic needs of students. We also identified that as we shifted in the spring, when students and teachers and staff returned in the fall, everyone might be returning to stage 1 again with new learners and new experiences. So it's important, you'll see the stages referenced periodically in the guidance docs. It's so important that we keep in mind that the expectations and resulting practices and how staff and students are experiencing our world right now will remain fluid throughout the year. So in the guidance documents, you're going to see a full summary of each one of the stages, but you'll also see a direct link to the full document that we created. So we took this idea of stages and then spent time in identifying aligned student behaviors or outcomes and what potential teacher actions could help us better understand if learners and staff were residing in this stage, and then what those leader, coach, or peer actions could be to help move and promote the learning and experiences toward the next stages. And we also align these not only to the expectations for teaching and learning found in Danielson and the CCT, but also we consulted with the national standards for online teaching and learning. So you'll see those referenced in there. This is a tool that can become a really valuable resource. It is not a rubric, it's not an evaluative instrument. It can help support goal setting, reflection, self-assessment, and feedback conversations. So you'll see in our parts that we included some examples of how to collect evidence. And this is an example from part 1 of possible asynchronous evidence collection or information gathering about what's happening. And this is aligned to those stage 1 priorities: communication, community building, tech needs, basic tech operations. And then we also included synchronous examples, because so many of you are engaging in varied models and sometimes simultaneous. So it's going to be important to remember that you are using, Patrick mentioned it, you're using some of those same practices that you've always used in gathering information about what's happening for our learners. You're still looking and looking at work and viewing instruction, whether it's live or recorded or digital. You're still listening. You're listening to learners have conversations, you're listening to live instruction, or you're listening to recorded instruction. And we're still striving to interact with our learners, just maybe in different ways, and our families, who are those important partners in the learning. We also included something similar in part 2 for observing for stage 1 priorities, but in support of our leaders. How are we able to view and listen and interact to gather information to better understand those leadership practices, promoting those priorities? It's also important to remember that you have existing excellent resources at your fingertips that you have used before. And one of those being the evidence guides that have been created. They can be sources of support for you in determining how and what to look for. And then you need to think about how to adapt to your model. And then you also have in alignment to the leader evaluation and support rubric, potential sources of evidence. Many of these are still very appropriate in your information gathering in support of leadership practice. And in the part 1 of the documents, you will see 3 absolutes in regard to evidence collection. So just take 20 seconds and review those. We also promote the practice. Now, these are absolutes in support of teachers. So these are practices we promote for assistant principals and principals. But we also support the practice of district leaders engaging in these same practices in support of leaders. So we know of assistant superintendents who are engaging in walkthroughs in Google Classroom. We know of superintendents who are sitting in live Zoom sessions because they are in particular supporting how a leader is best supporting teaching and learning in that building. These are important in that they're indicated explicitly in Domain 2 of the Connecticut Leader Evaluation and Support rubric and essential to meeting the Domain 1 performance and practice expectations. So in our research, we organized and identified many ways that we can give feedback. So written feedback is always valuable, but the goal here, especially this year, is to find really efficient and effective ways to provide feedback, to create feedback cycles for teachers and ensure ongoing support through feedback. So we created infographics that you will see included in the guidance documents in part 1, and they can be accessed directly through this link. And you'll notice that these can be applicable teacher to student, student to student, teacher to teacher. And if leaders or those who support leaders choose to adopt any one of these practices, we are then modeling the use of those valuable digital tools. Imagine going into a Google Classroom and creating a screencast and just talking directly to a leader or a teacher about what you're seeing on the screen. In part 1, you will see an example of a piece of feedback, written feedback, with some additional links to outside examples. And in part 2, you will see a link to an available sample of feedback to an administrator.
It's more important than ever before to remember and really emphasize that the feedback that we're describing here, it doesn't live in isolation. We recognize, and when we work with schools to place that type of feedback into the larger context of the systems that support schools, we really talk about that as a 3-legged stool. And that 3-legged stool is there to ensure that student learning is occurring for all. And in fact, that learning is happening everywhere and for everyone in our schools, adults and students alike. We know that we must have effective professional learning and quality inquiry teams, or PLCs, But when feedback is feeding forward, it's ensuring that that professional learning is responsive and actionable in the system and in the moment. And that those inquiry teams are, they're exploring the right questions, they're asking and having the right dialogue and moving their practice forward routinely. This is especially important as teachers and leaders this year are engaging in practices in completely new ways in a lot of times and within new environments. So we need to be able to support them in that system that's really helping to move it forward and thinking less about feedback or the observation and feedback or artifact review and feedback and or conversation and feedback as just an isolated event. Both part 1 and part 2 guidance documents offer comprehensive suggestions for the development of responsive professional learning. Regardless of your model of teaching and learning, professional learning remains important and obviously continues to be a part of that system. The professional learning recommendations that we've given inside the documents include some guiding questions for PDEX so that they can continue to be responsive and engage in routine analysis of how things are going and plan to support their district over the course of the year and their teachers and leaders over the course of the year. To look at and that we provide potential learning outcomes that help to align and understand what kind of skills, dispositions, and tools adults need to be able to do the work that they're doing inside the schools. We provide suggested calendars for implementation to help look at kind of a scope and sequence to that professional learning that, once again, is like any good curriculum is adaptable and manageable based on what's happening. And then we look and provide some outlines of potential methods of delivery. Remember that the systems and the structures that we're really supporting and providing guidelines on or guidance on, they're there to help lead to evaluation practice in a district that provides that lifeline that Amy spoke of, that helps support people in the process over the course of the year and helps to support increased individual and collective efficacy as we ensure that the year is really focused and the feedback that is being provided is really focused on growth over the course of the year. In order to engage in that practice, the guidance supports our capacity as supervisors and as evaluators to build on strengths of existing practice and support adaptations and adjustments necessary to ensure that there's continued learning. And it's regardless of the model, we need to be able to focus our attention on equity and accessibility and the well-being of all who are in our educational community. As was mentioned, the next webinar will focus on student learning objectives and leader goals, and will follow a very similar structure to what we described here, building on what is known, adapting, and continued focus on well-being and equity. As you consider the alignment of your performance and practice review to your goals and goal setting, educators and administrators should really strive to develop and implement goals that meet the specific needs of their staff, and their learners and their families and their schools and districts. And that needs to align to what we know and understand about our districts or school goals. We need to continue to represent year-long and developmentally appropriate growth for all of our learners. And we need to make sure that those are designed so that we are building those together and collaboratively, and that they're mutually agreed to in the process so that we have that cohesiveness moving forward. The 2021 school year generates new challenges to, really what has always been important, and that's need to collaborate to support student success and the development of a culture of learning through the collective efficacy of teachers and of leaders. Maintaining past practice, including utilization of faculty meetings, local and external expertise, data discussions with teams or departments, and targeted research-based strategies and resources, all of those remain essential and can continue. These all will support a continued focus on student learning priorities, the impact of instructional practices that teachers are engaging in, and the outcomes generated from the leadership practice that you're engaging in, regardless of the models of learning.
We know that this is a challenging year and challenging work, so please feel free to reach out to any one of us. We are here to support your well-being and your efficacy.